We're back with the delightful, wonderful Charissa Rice, who is a patient advocate for Next Stage. And, you know, what amazes me is that you went home, you finally listened, and you started doing hemodialysis at home.
Yes.
How long were you with the hemodialysis? What were some of the benefits that you can tell people about? And have you had other forms of dialysis besides just the hemodialysis and the perinatal?
Well, when I first started dialysis, I started with the peritoneal dialysis. And then, like I said, my function came back. And then 3 years later, I kind of crashed back into dialysis. And that's how I ended up in center. Like, in-center dialysis was kind of traumatic for me. I was hard-headed. I guess you can say they probably labeled me a non-compliant patient. And so I was, like I said, really hard-headed. And so finally the nurse convinced me that maybe Next Stage might be a little bit better for me. She told me, like I said, that wake-up call that I needed was that if I kept doing what I was doing, which was just doing the exact opposite of what the doctors recommended, I probably wouldn't live to see my kids grow up. And so once I started Next Stage, things did change for me. As far as benefits, they tell you about lifestyle benefits, being able to have the freedom to dialyze when you want to, the benefits of eating, having a more flexible diet as far as fluid intake and the things that you can eat, and also health benefits, reduced medication and less stress on the heart. And for me, I did experience all those benefits, but especially the heart thing was one of the benefits for me. I was up for a double transplant, a kidney transplant and a heart transplant. Well, after being on Next Stage for a year, they took me off the heart transplant. So I don't have a heart well, I'm not going to say I don't have a heart, but
Yeah, we know you have a heart.
I do have heart issues, but I no
controlled?
longer need a heart transplant.
But do you still have the pacemaker?
I do have the pacemaker. So, and of course, that hard head self of me kicked back in, and I asked the doc, can I get it removed? You know, and I'm like, and so he said, like I told you, it's an insurance policy. So I've learned to live with that, and it's my insurance policy. So I've had it since 2009. It's never went off, but I embrace it now. I don't ignore it like I do a lot of things that I don't want to accept. So
Right.
it's there as that insurance policy in case I need it.
And that's really important
Yes.
to your children and
Yes.
to you and to your
Yes.
family.
And I had to learn really fast. It's not about me.
It's not, you can't see it. Can you see it? I don't see it.
No.
So that's the most important thing. Okay, so then you found out. So then you were on hemodialysis for how long before you had a kidney transplant?
On the home hemodialysis for a year. So I had been waiting 6 years already for a kidney and had been put on hold back and forth because of the heart issues that I had. And so once my heart issues were corrected and I was taken off the heart transplant list, they told me I qualified for a kidney transplant. Mm-hmm. So I received a kidney in 2011, and it worked for about 2.5, almost 3 years. It was the end of 2013 is when it actually failed.
And how did you know it was failing? Same things that were happening before with you?
I guess I kind of knew that it was starting to fail. I started swelling up a little bit. I had previously, maybe a month before that, had a really bad cold. And I think that the rejection might have been partially my fault because I wasn't holding down the immunosuppressives that you take to keep the kidney. And so as I was sitting there talking to the nurse about all these symptoms I was experiencing, I started thinking back, and I said, you know what? Maybe I wasn't holding down my medication during that time when I was sick. And so by the time we actually figured it out, the rejection had already set in.
Happened. Okay, now is it possible for you today to get another kidney transplant?
Oh yes,
And
yes.
you want that,
and
right?
Oh yeah, and I want another one.
You want another one,
despite of losing that kidney. I think it's worth it to go through it again. And
Right.
yeah, I want another kidney.
Okay, so then you had to go back onto hemodialysis again. And you are on it today, right now, right?
Yes.
Now, the benefits of hemodialysis about the times. Now, how many, when you first had to go back onto hemodialysis, how many hours a day or how many days a week did you dialysize?
Okay, so with home dialysis, I was doing it 6 days a week, but the treatment times were shorter. And a lot of people who are on traditional dialysis, which is 3 days a week, a lot of them think, how can you do it 6 days a week? Well, the thing is, the trade-off is you don't feel wiped out like you do with traditional dialysis. A lot of times there's not a lot of recovery time. Once you get off the machine, you can get up and go. Versus a lot of in-center patients, and I'll speak for myself, when I was in-center, which was one reason why I had to stop working. Usually after treatment, it took me about 6 hours to get me going again. I would have to lay down, rest up, get something to eat just to start again. And once I started feeling good again, it was time to go back to the center and start that process all over.
Right.
Versus home dialysis, a lot of times you don't need that recovery time. The average recovery time is about an hour.
Really?
For me, I have 0 to 15 minutes. Usually I pretty much time my treatments for right before it's time for me to go out the door. So, and the treatment times are much shorter. Like I said, the average in-center treatment is 3 to 4 hours, sometimes 5.
Wow.
When you're at home, the average time is 2.5, 3 hours most of the time.
So now you can have another choice here. You can do it while you're sleeping.
Yes.
Now, how hard is that?
For me, it's not that hard. Now I'm doing nocturnal is what they call it. And so I'm treating every other day. And that's the thing. It's really flexible. So it's not like a cookie cutter type of prescription. They really tailor it to your needs and what you want to do. And so now that I'm doing it at night, they put the prescription to how long you want to be on the machine or how long you sleep. So on average, I'm usually running about 5.5, 6 hours at night.
And it doesn't bother you to do it, right?
No. Now, it was an adjustment period, I'd say, when I first learned. It took me about a good month to get used to the needles actually being in my arm. And so I will admit, when I first started, I was waking up every hour on an hour, checking my arm, making sure the needles were still in. But now, we've been doing it now for about a year and a half now, and so I sleep through it.
Isn't it taped to your arm though? It's not.
Yeah, so you tape it, and then there are also some extra precautions. They have like it's called a wet sensor. So basically, almost like when you're potty training a child, just to make sure if they wet the bed, an alarm will go off. So if there was some moisture or blood, the alarm would go off, and there are also some safety mechanisms set up in the machine as well too.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people, now that I've been working with Next Stage a long time now, about a year or more, I thought that nocturnal was really a good idea, because once you get used to it, I mean, if you've ever been in the hospital and you've ever had an IV or anything that you have fluids going into your arm, you have to sleep. You're not awake all night.
Oh, yes.
You just get used to it.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it doesn't bother your husband either, does it?
No, and initially he was a little cautious at first. When, like I said, we first started doing it at night, he would wake me up even when I was asleep just to say, recheck your arm. And I'm like, I'm good. And so we've both adjusted to it. But like I said, it is an adjustment period. But like I said, after that month or two, I'm fine. And I love it.
So you go to bed at what time? Can I ask?
Oh, yeah. I'm an early bird. But
You're an early bird.
I am. Usually because, and this is
You got
the case.
kids.
Yeah, I got kids. And my husband works this like graveyard shift now. So we usually get up like 4:45. So usually I'm in the bed about 8. And so
Wow. Yeah, I can understand.
I go to bed about 8. And I run till about 3-ish in the morning. And then once I get off, I get up and go for the day.
Wow. You're a get up and goer.
Right.
So, well, if you were getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to a center, then this wouldn't be hard for you, right?
Yeah.
So
pretty
anyhow,
much.
we need to take a short break.
Okay.
and then we're going to talk about becoming a patient advocate and what you do today.
Yes,
Okay?
sure.
We'll be right back on Kathryn Raaker's Let's Just Talk. And don't forget to go to nextstage.com. That's nxstage.com for all the information that you need on this wonderful program of hemodialysis. We'll be right back. We're back on Let's Just Talk, but a question that I have for you, Charissa, and it's Charissa Rice. She's a patient advocate with Next Stage. And how has Next Stage affected your family, your extended family, your friends? What do they think of it? Do they see a difference in you?
Oh, yeah. I'll say for my immediate family, they appreciate me doing it at home because when I was in center, I wasn't much of a team player. And
Really?
and we do everything at home. Well, we did everything at home as a team. And back then, a lot of things fell on my kids and my husband, and even spilled over into my parents and his parents and other extended family, because I wasn't able to. The kids were really involved in sports, and so I wasn't able to take the kids to sporting events, or I couldn't attend parent-teacher conferences. And even for myself, I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do, like work. And I was really involved in the church, really involved in my community. And so when I was in center, everybody was affected. And so now it has given me a lot more of my life back. I'm able to be that old Charissa again. I'm active in the church again. I volunteer at the kids' school. I volunteer at my church. We do a lot of community work, and able to do things that a lot of people take for granted, like go grocery shopping. Now, my husband doesn't know the first thing about cooking, and that fell on him for months. And so,
how did that go?
My kids were eating a lot of hot dogs and potato chips. So I'm sure they were much appreciative of, a nice home-cooked meal again. I was back to cooking again, just being in my role again, and, being able to contribute to the family, working again. With that loss of income, that can be a strain on the family,
That was
too.
one of the things that I wanted to ask you. How did everybody deal with that?
Oh my gosh. I'm sure they did not like it. And as far as me and my husband still trying to make ends meet, when, that big chunk of, money is missing, you become really creative. And so,
couponing, all those kind of things.
Gosh,
right, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yes. And so things have really changed, not only for me physically, but like I said, mentally, emotionally, things are in a much better state. And I always share with patients sometimes things for me, and that's what I can only speak for myself, but something that can be so traumatic on a family and so hard pressing didn't tear us apart, but it actually brought us together. We're a much more close-knit family because of, I think, my kidney disease and all the other issues that came along.
Right. I know in my own life, it made my family closer to me because of all the operations and all the things I went through. And back then, it was I was young when the first thing happened. I was 25 and just married. So, when you pull yourself together like that, you become a stronger person. And your kids become closer to you.
They do.
Right?
They do.
Right. Now let's talk about how you got involved with working for Next Stage. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
When did that happen?
That happened in 2012. So by this time, I had been on Next Stage for about a year and was doing really well and had received a transplant. So, I was back being me again, basically. And the nurse had noticed it, and she was like, you really need to share your story. And I was just like, with who? And I'm just like, I don't mind sharing it, but I didn't know when, where, and how to even do it. And so I got in touch with somebody from Next Stage, reached out, and asked me, would I mind sharing my story? And I'm like, not at all. And they was like, well, we want to hear your experience with Next Stage. What do you think? And they asked my opinion of Next Stage. And at the time, I'm like, well, I love it. And my husband had nicknamed it Good Old Next Stage because, like you said, I was back at home doing what I used to do, and I love cooking. And so he's getting a home cooked meal again. And so he saw the changes and loved it. And so once I started talking with like the area manager in my area, which is Chicago, he's like, I need to get you out here to share your story with some other people, to encourage some other people. And I was like, sounds good to me. And
So they send you all over, though, don't they?
now they do, yes. And so I go around and I share my story and I listen to other people's stories and try to encourage patients, because this can be a really traumatic disease and it can really weigh on your mind. And like I said, depression can set in. So I love doing what I do, and I love talking to other patients just to give them that encouragement to know they're not in this alone.
Now, when you do it, how many days a week do you do it for as a patient advocate?
It all depends. All depends on what's going on. The events, I do collaborate a lot with the NKF and other health organizations. So I'd say 3 to 4 days out of a week.
So the rest of the time you get to do the things you want to do, right?
Yeah, unless I'm doing something for the kids,
Right,
which I guess is what I want to do.
right. Are you a crafter?
In my mind, I am. I like, I love like arts and crafts. I like to make jewelry. Do I get to do it a lot? Not much. I am in the process of learning how to crochet. I love knitted things. I like sewing. But I'm the type of person, I want to learn it and like do it in a day. So that's the type of person I am. So, but I am.
No,
like
I can crochet, but I can't knit. I have a hard time with knitting. It's just
So
doing
yeah,
those-
I'm learning that, and actually I'm taking some cooking classes that I do
Okay.
once a week. So
Well, let's talk a little bit before we leave the show today. Let's talk about your diet,
Okay.
per se. When you go on to hemodialysis at home and you're in an in-center, let's talk about what you could eat again. Can you tell us? Can you share that?
Oh, sure. So in center, the diet can really seem restrictive. And so things like lasagna and spaghetti and pizza, you have to limit, and cheese, because they're high in like phosphorus. And so, it's really hard for the body to process that when you're on traditional dialysis. But my diet has become a lot more liberated. And
You had lasagna tonight, right?
I did, and enjoyed it. I
You
really
enjoyed
did,
it?
and really
I know,
enjoyed
I
it,
know
and
you
with
said-
the cheese in it. So yeah. So I get to enjoy those things that usually a dietitian would say tis, or don't have that as much. You get to feel normal again, and I think that's what the Next Stage offers. You get a lot more options. A lot of times when you're in center, you seem to hear like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. But when you do home hemo or a home option, you get a lot more options in
Right.
your diet, in your time, in your fluid intake.
Right. So, in wrapping this up, and you're talking to somebody that's just like you were, in denial, what would you say to them and their family members?
What I would say is you've got to just try it. You've got to see what's on the other side. A lot of times people just pigeonhole and think what traditional dialysis is, but this is another world. It's two different worlds. Just try it. It's so much more liberating. And it can be liberating in your diet. It can be liberating in your time. And just things that you thought you couldn't do anymore, you can do again.
And you're going to feel much better about it, and your kids are going to love you,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yes.
And your husband's really going to
Oh,
love you.
yeah. Oh,
Right, right. Because, it's really changed your life.
It has. It really has.
And so what are your goals for this year
Oh,
with Next Stage?
with Next Stage, my goals this year with Next Stage is just to get to a lot more patients and tell them about the therapy. Even though they've been out for 2005, I still run into a lot of patients who have just never heard of it. And I just want to help get that word out a lot more.
Right, because it's really going to benefit them.
Yes.
And we want to thank you so very much for coming on
Thanks
our
for
show
having me.
today. And you're in Chicago.
Yes.
So there's a lot of people in Chicago that watch our programs. And so if they want to get a hold of Next Stage, what do they do?
If they want to get a hold of Next Stage, they can go to nxstage.com.
And don't forget to tune in to all of our shows. And now that we have My TV to go, you can watch us on your digital, your iPhone or your iPad or your Android or your Google Play. But you can also go to letsjusttalkradio.com and letsjusttalk.com, and you'll be able to get all of our programming. I want to thank you so very much again for coming all the way from Chicago to
thank
visit with
you.
us on Let's Just Talk, and we'll see you next time on Let's Just Talk.